You listen to me. You're Nick fucking... Whoa, Cage!
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man, Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone is keeping well this week.
Hi everybody, Matt Guy here, rocks and raring to go. Hello.
Hello everyone, yeah, we are here to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and Andy's got a massive smile on his face just at the mention of the mere name of it. Hello everyone.
Doesn't exist, we're done with the MCU now. It's that simple.
I saw a Facebook sponsored post, and NME said it's the best possible way to kickstart Phase 5.
Yep.
But all I've heard is negativity.
Yeah, because you listen to him, that's why. And his ilk, who don't have fun.
It's really boring. Really, really boring. Like, the whole film is just, I've got a daughter. Where's my daughter? There's my daughter. Oh, she's missing again. Where's my daughter? There's my daughter. This is a Kang. That's the whole fucking film. Like, it's really bad. Really, really bad.
Was there any? I mean, I'm not going to watch it, but don't spoil it for anyone that hasn't watched it yet. But is there at least something interesting post-credit wise for it?
Yeah, both of them. Like, very good.
No, nothing. No, I mean, there is. The second one, I think, probably is a bit more relevant than the first. But yeah, there's something there. But yeah, I've got to the point. I was talking to our mate Ash Dolan. Like, I feel like Guardians might be the final chance for me. If that isn't a James Gunn film, I'm probably done. Because if it's just a Kevin Feige film that James Gunn happened to direct, I'm just not interested anymore.
But he won't be. We'll be back here in 2 years' time talking about the same thing over and over again.
We'll see.
Groundhog Day.
We are here, though, to discuss the unbearable weight of massive talent. It would help if I open my notes app up, though, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, Andy, let me interject there. While you'll find a bit of prep stew, I've got a question for you. I've been in Western Supermare today for Sam's family. They used to do like an annual family bash, and they all stop in a hotel and they all do this and that. Have you ever been on a holiday to a seaside town, to a hotel like a B&B, and you've negotiated with the hotel to have free drinks as part of your package of staying with the hotel?
I haven't, but I've been in a situation where that has happened.
This is the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I was there at, so basically they'd negotiated to get £1 drinks after 6 p.m. And I was like, how the hell do you negotiate with a hotel what you're going to pay for drinks? And they were like, yeah, like we do it all the time. We've brought 25 people to the hotel and we've put so much money like to pay for the rooms and our meals and stuff at the hotel, and we negotiated the drinks. I was like, is that a thing? Is this a thing?
I don't think it's actually. It depends how if they go there all the time and then know the people. I'm guessing that it's an independent hotel as well. So I think it was the Sandringham or not Sandhurst. It was something sand based in Blackpool. My dad's mate ran it for years. So when we was kids, but I still remember it happening because I remember it being odd. And then when we went back years later, it still applied. Like, because again, you went as a big group of people. With that, in that case, it was the football club. That you were taking 20 people there, and they'd give it was almost like a deposit. Like, oh, here's your 2 hours in the bar for half price, and then after that, it's back to normal. But because otherwise, what are you going to do? You're in Blackpool, you're going to drink wherever you want. But in this case, because there were so many people, it just seemed to work out. I don't think it's a through the books policy. Let's just say that. But it's not as weird as you think. It does go on.
This is bizarre to me, but then I thought, oh, it's brilliant. I suppose you know that for that little bit of time you're going to be there, and you got cheap drinks and stuff. But it was. I thought if one man has lived and breathed this, it was for you, Stu. So I know you've at least heard of it. So I was right in some degree.
Yeah.
There we go.
It does sound a very Stu thing. I'm in agreement with you there. So Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, having to cast our minds back a little bit because it was this time last year. Do you remember what your thoughts were going into this movie? Obviously, there was quite a lot of hype that it was Nicolas Cage as Nicolas Cage. What were you worried about, or what were you looking forward to, Matt?
I had a worry that because there was no hype this time going into it, like I was really looking forward to it when it came out. I thought that when I'd watch it this time, it wouldn't have the same pizzazz and excitable feeling of looking forward to it, watching it just again. So that was my worry going into it, that it might have lost a bit of its charm, maybe because I was so looking forward to watching it when it came out, originally.
Stu, about yourself?
As soon as the concept was mentioned, it was like this. In theory, sounds like one of the greatest ideas ever. But when you get things like actors playing themselves, and like we've seen in certain Cage films of other actors playing themselves, where it's either hit and miss, and there never seems to be a middle ground with it. But trepidation, I suppose, because it sounded so good, and even the teaser trailer, which I did watch for this as well at the time, just out of curiosity more than anything else, because I don't think it was you. I think someone else mentioned it on Twitter that you watch this and it looks as mental as it possibly can be, and didn't know that that's what it was for at first. But yeah, it was more a case of please don't mess it up, because it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very much in a similar boat to yourself going into it. It had so much promise, but there was always that little bit of a fear, because we have seen people play versions of themselves and it's gone horribly wrong. Obviously, with our boy Pedro being in there, hopes were pretty high just based off the fact that they'd clearly put money into the cast outside of Nick Cage. So the rest of the cast, Tiffany Haddish, Sharon Horgan, Neil Patrick Harris, Ike Barinholtz, all people who've done really good sitcom work and film work in their own right as well. So actually, that's a really solid cast when you look around outside of the main man himself. So I was quite pleased with that. The director is a Tom Gormican, who up until this point he'd only directed a very run-of-the-mill comedy, which I think it might have been an Amazon Prime movie, called That Awkward Moment. And then this. When I originally looked, like, he had nothing else in the pipeline, but I've just looked now to see if there's anything else being attached to the director. And there's another film that he's attached to direct called Macau, which I had to Google, and apparently Macau is a region in China. And that's literally all I know about this film, because it just says in development. No one else is attached to this movie, so I have absolutely no idea what's going on. But it does look like Tom Gormick, and he's going to be doing something else. But it kind of feels like he did this, smashed it out of the park, and it's still a bit of an unknown entity.
I'm sure there's a type of bird from there.
Quite possibly. I don't know. Google just tells me it's officially the Macau Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China. That's literally all I know about it.
Macau, China, birds.
You're sure not thinking?
I'm not thinking of a macaw before you say it now.
I thought it was more of a cacao. Oh dear, terrible joke. Great execution.
Found anything, Stu?
I found some cuisine, and they do Formula 3 there, but nothing on birds.
No. I mean, that could have gone horribly wrong when you were searching for Macau birds, but never mind. IMDb describes this film as, in this action-packed comedy, Nicolas Cage plays Nick Cage, channeling his iconic characters as he's caught between a superfan, played by Pedro Pascal, and a CIA agent by Tiffany Haddish.
I'm Nick Friggin! Okay!
What's the worry here, Nick? You've lost some of your talent as an actor?
No. What did he say?
He says he loves you, but he went in a different direction.
I'm done. I'm quitting acting.
Ah, man, I'm driving through the hills. I'm sorry. One more time.
We got another offer. It's $1 million. It's to attend a wealthy gentleman's birthday party.
The guy that owns this house, what's his name?
Javi. Mr. Cage.
Excuse me. Is Javi going to want me to,
I'm not sure I understand.
Look, it's Javi.
I am Javi.
Nick Cage. God, this place is stunning.
What is your favorite movie?
That's one of those questions that's impossible to answer. You can't just limit it to one.
Imagine me and you, I do.
Is it too much?
Is this supposed to be me? It's grotesque. I'll give you 20,000 for it. I didn't know that was a cliff. We could have died.
I'm in position.
I think that's the actor Nick Cage.
Nick Cage, I love you. Have you seen Cruise 2?
I'm 44 years old. Why would I see Cruise 2? I've seen Face Off and Con Air.
What do you guys want?
We're with Central Intelligence. Do you know who you're spending time with? One of the most ruthless men on the face of this planet. I need you to help the U.S. government.
Let's kill this.
Find a way into that room, Nick.
I can see myself doing more of this stuff. I think I might have a real gift for it.
Good, because we got another mission for you.
No.
Your friend is working for the U.S. government.
Don't lie to me.
Are those my golden guns?
They're my golden guns. I don't want to kill you. You're the last person I want to kill. I love you. I love you. I'm Nick Friggin! Whoa, okay!
So this film begins with a young woman being kidnapped while she's watching Con Air. We then meet Nicolas Cage. Cage's career has gone to shit. He's still trying to find that role that will reignite his career. Not only is his career on the out, so is his relationship with his daughter Addie and the ex-wife Olivia, played by Sharon Horgan. And on top of all of that, he's also broke. But once he gets that role, he'll be back. Not that he went away. Sadly, he doesn't get that role. So he gets drunk at his daughter's birthday party and makes an ass of himself whilst trying to show out with a song that he said he had wrote for Addie. Drunkenly that night, he returns to his hotel room where he tells his manager that he's going to quit. His manager tells him that there is one last job, and it is to attend a party in Mallorca at a Playboy billionaire's mansion for $1 million. That was 20 minutes of the film. It started off really quite quickly and got straight into the meat of the story, which I thought was excellent. Matt, what did you think of the opening of this movie?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the it doesn't dilly-dally around and kind of sets the main points pretty quickly. The problems with his estranged daughter, the CIA stuff, and sets the scene of why he's going, quite concisely. There was no, he didn't feel dragged out or anything like that. And I think it was refreshing straight away to see that it wasn't going, well, it slightly was, but it wasn't going down a crazy experimental route with it. It was still pretty route one, to use a footballing term. It wasn't like, it was an adaptation or anything like that, put it that way. So, I really enjoyed the start of it, and it set the scene for what was going to happen in the rest of the film pretty well.
Yeah. Stu, your thoughts?
Yeah, but saying it's not like adaptation yet, he's talking to himself. But with the introduction of Nicky, his younger 1994 self, which was, I mean, first time of seeing that, it was just giggling to myself at the top of my voice, because obviously it's not Valley Girl, it's something, it's the other one around the same time.
Wild at Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's the Rogan interview version of Nick Cage, isn't it?
so getting Nicky and getting Crazy Cage when he's reading the script on the steps without reading it and just shouting it at him in his face. And then you get the terrible song on the piano, and I think, yeah, this is perfect. This is it. All the doubts that it had beforehand gone straight away, because I don't think this film could open any better than it did.
Agreed. Like the meat of the story is when he's in Mallorca. You just need to set it up, which is exactly what they did. They gave you all the plot points that were going to pay off later in the film, and there was just zero fat on this script. They got into it perfectly. I like that they sort of play on the fact that probably like 2022 Nick Cage, bar Pig, as we've discussed on this podcast, he's had the dark years, hasn't he? And some people aren't going to know that he's come out of the dark years, or that he's on his way out of the dark years, should we say. So I think if you didn't know what Nick Cage is doing now, you wouldn't necessarily be shocked to hear if he was bankrupt almost. It almost feels like this could actually happen to him. So I thought that was great.
I remember at the time talking about this when we'd seen it first time round, and when I was talking about it at work, and amazingly when it started appearing on the side of buses as well, and people said, "Oh, Nicolas Cage, like the one from Face Off, like he'd done nothing for 20 odd years," and these are just the normal people who don't watch all this stuff. But you are right, there is people like that out there, including who I know personally, who did think he'd gone away or he'd retired, because they haven't seen it on his name in lights or doing a big film for a long time.
They weren't there for the primal years, were they?
No. They missed the that leopard or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, what a film. Cage arrives at the docks and is ready to go to the mansion. He checks with the boat driver what Javi is like. He's not going to want Cage to suck his dick or fuck his wife or watch him fuck his wife. But then the boat driver reveals that he is actually Javi. The look on Pedro's face, that sweet, sweet man, is just so happy to meet his hero. It was quite adorable. I loved it. Initially, Cage was annoyed with Javi wanting to spend time with him and improvising scenes from a film which Javi was writing. Soon, Cage eventually softens his stance towards him. Seeing a kindred spirit in Javi, they bond over their favourite movies, Face Off, The Cabinet of Dr. Cagliari, and Paddington 2. It made Javi want to be a better man. Javi goes to bed, Cage goes to the bar, where our hero is met by his younger, cocksure, confident self, Nicky. Nicky's angry with Nick for accepting smaller roles because he's Nick fucking Cage, is a fucking star, and then Nicky kisses Nick. Nick Cage smooches good. When leaving the bar, 2 CIA agents take Nick and explain to him that Javi is a smuggler and has kidnapped the girl from the very start of the film. She's some politician's daughter and they're there to get her back. They need Cage's help in order to get closer to Javi. In an attempt to spy on Javi for longer, Cage announces he's going to work with Javi on making a film. While snooping around Javi's compound, Nick sees a room where he believes the politician's daughter may be held. He persuades Javi to let him have a look in there, when Nick comes face to face with a shrine in his honour, including a terribly made wax model of Casper Troy supporting the golden guns from Face Off. After a day together whilst high on LSD, they decide the film should be on their relationship. The LSD scene. So, like, whenever you see a comedy movie, they like to put one particular scene front and centre in the trailer and really fucking hammer it home. And this LSD scene was the one that kept appearing in every version of every trailer that they released. But I remember us three being sat in the cinema, knowing, like, broadly what was going to happen. We all laughed along. Everyone else in the audience laughed along too. It got a really good reaction, that scene did. Stu, thoughts?
Yeah, it did. And like I said, having seen this first and having it kind of but it didn't really matter because the whole thing was so mental anyway. I'd almost forgot it completely existed going into watching the actual film. And so a lot of people had obviously been swayed there by the trailer, like normal people are. But again, a bit like when we went to watch Jackass Forever, there was stuff in there that was in the trailer, but people still laughed their heads off at it because it was funny. Even like the stupid things like the wall. Like, it was just funny shit, and it worked perfectly.
Matt, that probably is the right scene to try and draw audience in, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it is. The funny thing about it was, like, I remember really laughing hard the first time I saw it, but the second time, knowing it was coming up, the anticipation for the laugh was almost as funny for me as the scene itself. Like, I couldn't wait. And then when they're doing the whole grab my hand, and then I've got a very big head, and like it was just that was the stuff that I missed the first time around because I was laughing. And then obviously the reveal that he could have walked, like the whole thing is just really funny, and like the whole like being, oh, they should be paranoid, and then they look at the two guys eating their ice cream. It's just so good. Like it's because the whole film is a parallel of the film they're trying to make, and obviously intentionally done. This was the absolute peak of the film for me. It does drop afterwards because it needs to have something for everyone, as they say in their own film they're trying to make. But it's just, this was the peak, and I just absolutely loved it. And the relationship between these two is the real meat and the bread, and like the high point and the drama and the real meat of this film. And I loved it that it does keep a hold of that as the rest of the film goes on. But it peaked here, and it was just fantastic. I had a huge smile on my face when I was watching it, and that's all you can ask for in a comedy, really, isn't it? That you're smiling throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the mark of a great comedy for me, is that you can return to it later, knowing the joke, and you're still going to laugh and smile to it. It's excellent, it really is. It's played perfectly by both Nick and Pedro as well. Just, as you say, the paranoia that leads into this silly little misunderstanding at the war that then gets resolved, and it's really funny. It's excellent. When meeting with the CIA agent again, they tell Nick that he should add a kidnapping plot to their screenplay, thinking the mention of kidnapping may set Javi on edge. When Cage recommends this to Javi reacts badly, thinking Cage is losing his mind. Something is wrong. In reaction to this, Javi brings Cage's ex-wife and daughter over to Mallorca. Javi says that he needs to bury the hatchet with his family to clear his mind so that he can work on the script unencumbered. Cage takes this as a threat. Meanwhile, Sergio Baldassare, head of a mob crime family, makes contact with Javi's cousin Lucas to tell him that they should merge operations after the Catalonian president is elected. This is when we figure out that Javi realises that Lucas has kidnapped the politician's daughter. And this is the moment where the audience finds out that Javi isn't the head of the mob in Mallorca. Lucas then reveals to Javi that Cage is in bed with the feds as well, and gives Javi an ultimatum. Javi must kill Nick Cage or Lucas will kill Javi. Javi takes Nick out into the wilds of Mallorca. Tension is high in the air. Both sensing the end of the line is near. Both men have found a counterpoint in the other, but there's a cloud hanging over them. Both men pull a gun on each other. Javi is confused why Cage is pulling a gun on him. He explains that he's not really the head of the mob. He is forced to be a figurehead by his cousin and cannot leave the family and cannot be with the woman he loves for fear that they will come after her. Lucas's men find Nick and Javi. They start shooting at both of them. They get back to the compound and Olivia says they've kidnapped their daughter. We also see that the CIA agents at this point have also been murdered. Quite tense. Like they do manage to ration it up with all the silliness beforehand. The handbrake turn is quite sharp, but it's really effective, I think. Matt, end of the second act, how are you feeling?
Yeah, it was, to be fair. The funny thing was, in hindsight, knowing that swerve that Javi isn't the mobster. It was really interesting watching Nick Cage think he is the mobster when we know he isn't before the reveal. It was like, oh, like it's just it was almost like it was fascinating to see, but it wasn't, it was all intentional. Like Pedro was doing everything intentionally to make it look like he was a mobster when we know he knows he isn't, if that makes sense. The tension was high, but then they put that weird bit in with them swapping shoes, which I didn't really get, apart from the gag about him having subpar footwear when they're running off. Like, I didn't really get that. Like, I don't know if that was just to say that, like, even though they know they're going to kill each other, or one of them's going to kill the other, they are just actually best close friends. I don't know if that was all it was for, but it did stick out like a bit of a sore thumb for me. And I don't know if it's just because I was too dense to realise the joke or something. But yeah, I mean, it all went as it should. But as they mentioned, they've got to get to that tricky third act, as they mentioned in the film themselves. And I think that was where I was like, "Oh, what are they gonna do here? Like, does it just go into a faux action film and lose its charm of this bromance rom-com drama we've had so far?"
I sort of agree with the shoe swapping thing. It's a bit bizarre when they're about to gun each other down, but much like you, I can only assume it was to show that even in spite of everything else, these men sort of love each other. Like they do recognise themselves in the other person, hence why they feel comfortable enough to swap their clothing. It's a bit bizarre, but that's what I assume it must be as well. So I think I'm in agreement with you there. Stu, how are you feeling at this point?
Yeah, it's a bit like the playing football in the trenches in World War One on Christmas Day kind of thing, where you go into battle in the end, but you're all the same, really. That was what Matt said then was actually one of my mentions for the Good, the Bad, and the Crazy, later with the crazy part, where I didn't anticipate it being, for a film like this, for a second watch being so revelatory with regards to knowing that he isn't a criminal mastermind. Because it's like you said, the way he does play it, he plays it obviously to fool everyone anyway, and because he's made to. But there's no kind of tick where you think, oh yeah, he's just putting this on, and it makes it 10 times funnier. I don't know why it shouldn't work, and I don't think that this has ever happened before. When I've watched something for a second time, knowing obviously that it's like a turncoat kind of thing, but I was giggling more the second time because of that. Whenever he was on the screen, knowing that he was just a shyster, than the first time, it was really odd, really really odd. But like there's so many bits in it where we ain't even talked about it. Like, we ain't talked about jumping off the cliff and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it was going to be that big and things like that. How it was so stupid, like a buddy cop film for half of it, and then it turned into Taken for the last 40 minutes or so. And like when you start having subtitles and like a mob table in the sunshine, and it was perfectly done. And it could have gone very wrong, like we said earlier, with how the whole thing was approached, but how they blended it together was genius.
Yeah. Nick and the gang come up with a plan. Cage is going to dress up as the head of the crime family who hasn't been seen for 15 years. Cage, Olivia, Javi, and Gabriella manage to free Addie and the politician's daughter whilst this is all going on. The group races away to get to the US consulate. They're being hotly pursued. Javi and Gabriella stop behind to slow down Lucas's men. After a wild race through the streets of Mallorca, and the whole team race through the gates of the US Embassy, a showdown with Lucas ensues. Addie throws Nick a knife, and as he catches it, we cut to a Hollywood blockbuster where Nick Cage catches the knife that was thrown by his daughter and stabs Lucas. This is the blockbuster that was written by Nick Cage and Javi. The film goes down a storm. After the premiere, Vanity Fair went to interview Javi and Nick, but Nick wants to spend time with Olivia and Addie. Back in the family house, Cage tells Addie to pick a film, and she asks, "Have you ever seen Paddington 2?" How did you feel about the ending? It came quite quick and fast, I think, but I do feel it needed to, because it hit that point where it was ready to boil over, and they just needed to whip it off the heat and get the story told, I think. So I think they did the right thing once they'd left the wooded area, just getting through the end of the film, going hard and fast. Stu, how do you feel about the ending?
Yeah, worked. That's all you can say about it, really. It wasn't. I remember last year watching it and being a bit disappointed that it didn't go on a bit longer. But then watching it now, it works. It does. It makes a lot more sense. And again, I'd forgot about like the switch where it's like someone else playing his wife when you see it on the screen. I completely forgot that part happened. And then the whole Demi Moore thing, I thought it just worked really well. And I don't think I appreciated that first time round, which is again a very strange thing to happen.
Matt, did it work for you?
Yeah, I think so, because when it started to descend into purely just action film silliness, I worried it was just going to cheapen what had been a funny but thoughtful film up to this point. But it didn't. I literally guffawed with laughter both the first time and the second time with him dressed as the Italian crime head. And I wish there was a tiny bit more of him in that, because it really did tickle me. I think, and I don't know the actor's name, but the guy who played Lucas as well only had a really short amount of time to be the villain, but really used his minutes really well. And I thought that last 15 minutes before he meets his end was really good as well. So yeah, I think the ending needed to be quick, but it was kind of fitting really, because we got our start, we got our end pretty quickly, and it was the journey of how we got there that was the most important bit. It wasn't necessarily the beginning or the end that was the important parts of this film. So I was glad that it didn't drag it out too much.
Yeah, absolutely. In the respects of, like, I mean, that's a film you mentioned earlier, adaptation. The meat of the film was before it turned into an action movie. The heart of the film isn't about the action, is it? And I think that was the same here. So when it did become the almost parody of that type of film, they didn't want to dwell on it and spend another hour doing that, because I think that would have destroyed the groundwork that they'd put in up to that point. So the budget on this film was $30 million. The box office was $29.1 million. So it didn't even make back its filming budget, which I thought was quite strange, really, because it felt like it was everywhere. And it also, from what I could gather, like, it was quite a well-viewed movie. So I'm a little bit surprised that it didn't quite make its money back.
I think it's made its money through Amazon, like because it really quickly was like the headliner on Amazon Prime. Like, I remember it being on there and being like, "Oh man, this has gone in here quick," and they plastered it all over Amazon Prime for months. To the point where, like, I'm sure it wasn't even that long ago that when you just went on your Fire Stick, it was the banner when you go down to like anything other than, well, TV8 or Muck or whatever it is that you use. So yeah, I think like it would have been snapped up pretty quickly. So I don't think it would have had a theatrical release for very long, to be honest.
No,
And
that's a fair point.
You had the America still being COVID obsessed as well at the start of last year, and which didn't seem to matter for bigger films like Top Gun Maverick, like literally 2 or 3 months later. But for little ones like this, well, relatively little films like this, it was like, well, you ain't going to get the casual market out for it, am you? They'll take a risk for something massive, but just that 2 months. Because I remember, because I listened to obviously American podcasts and stuff, and they're still very wary 12 months ago. So I don't think that helped it either. But I would have. I mean, I am quite amazed by that. I thought it would have broke even at least.
Yeah.
Weird.
So Unbearable Weight premiered at South by Southwest on the 12th of March before getting its full release on the 22nd of April. The highest grossing films for April 2022, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 made $190 million that month before going on to make $402 million in total. Another big release is a film which has got a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a Marvel movie that made $163 million against a budget of 80. Stu, do you know which film it was?
I'm guessing it's that one. Eternals.
It's not. It's not. If I was to say it's Morbing Time, it was Morbius.
Is that the whole thing or the first run?
That I believe that is its first run, 163. But in fairness, no fucker saw it on its second run, so it probably was 163 or late anyway. From my view, though, that very much tells you that the quality of a film doesn't necessarily mean jack shit when it comes to how much money it will make. The scores on this film. Stu, do you want to go first? Tell us what you think score out of 10, out of 100 is on this.
Well, I'm guessing I can't remember it being panned by anyone. So I'm guessing critics around about 85, something like 8. Audience, again, people who watched it seem to really enjoy it. Very few who are annoyed, unless they were watching it without getting the references, which would be a strange thing to do anyway. Or unless they're younger, obviously they wouldn't get it. So maybe that. I'll go about the same, about 82 for audience.
Fairs. Matt, what do you reckon?
I reckon 85 for critic, but 75 for audience, because I think the critics would have lapped up the more nuanced stuff about it being meta and everything else a little bit more than the audience would.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The IMDb score was a 7.0. The Rotten Tomatoes audience and critical score was both 87%. So we're looking at just under 9 out of 10 for your average on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is one of the stronger scores we've had in both columns. Like it's generally, from what we've seen, we've had one good and the other's been a bit less than. But yeah, it seems that everyone seems to enjoy this film. So the critical response, Clarice Lockery from The Independent. The film rockets through its more conventional action comedy finale purely because both actors throw themselves wholeheartedly into the slapstick. It's a big win for Pascal. Thelma Adams from Movies for Grown-Ups. Remaining relevant, a roaring Cage embraces his massive talent as well as his enormous crazy and soars. Shirley Lee from The Atlantic, even in the scenes riffing on the 90s action movies that made Cage a household name, all shootouts, car chases and gunslinging standoffs, Cage and Pascal are magnetic to watch for their earnestness. One negative review that I had to highlight, though, was from Ty Burr, who, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is a top critic from Ty Burr's Watch List. Yeah, it's all very clever, but only clever, and swipes ideas from other better Cage movies. Like, does he not realise that's the whole point of this movie, is to swipe ideas from his other movies? It just seems a bit of an odd review. I thought that one was. Obviously, fan reviews were pretty positive as well. Except for the maniacs at Amazon.com, they only gave this film a 4.1 out of 5. Which for Amazon is like a 2-star for most normal humans.
That's awful.
Yeah. It got 75% 4 or 5-star reviews, though. Harry the Hippo gave it a 1-star review titled Best Film Ever. This film is incredible, so good. The reason it only gets 1 star is that I can't give it 6 stars out of 5. Sort yourself out, Amazon.
What?
Yeah. There's one review I had to read because, well, you'll see. Ramtech left a review titled An Investigation of Reviews Required. If ever a film should initiate an investigation of Amazon reviews and critic ratings, it should be this. Utterly appalling drivel. I can't see why anyone that was entertained when every facet of this film hit rock bottom, starting to lose confidence in Amazon Prime ratings. This was simply dreadful. Like, considering the number of Amazon reviews that we've read, this definitely isn't the film that needs highlighting. just a quick comparison. Iron Man 2 is rated at 4.7. And Iron Man 3 is rated at 4.6. They're both higher than Unbearable Weight, but apparently this guy thinks that Unbearable Weight is the film that they need to be investigating. So the good, the bad, and the crazy. Matthew, kick us off.
So for the good, it would be just generally the bromance element to it. Like, it's a relationship that you genuinely care about and genuinely evolves, and at the point where we think that they're going to it's going to dissolve, I think, like, there's a genuine sense of being, like, disappointed and it being bittersweet that the film has to carry on in that way, because it's just so good, the relationship between the two of them, like, so pure and so innocent. And I think Pascal's the star of this film. I think he's mad in itself to say. Like, he really carries that element of the comedy side of it, I think, better than Cage does. But as a pairing, like, their relationship is just so, like, it's so believable yet mad at the same time, because these two weird egos that collide with each other. But my bad, from an ego side of thing, is the Nicky thing. It just didn't do anything for me, and I'll tell you for why. If there was more of that, and it was more things from his career, because they don't do much of the deep cut in this film, right? So they mention Captain Corelli's mandolin, and then they go, and he goes, "Oh, criminally underrated, but by the way." And I was like, "Yeah, it fucking is, actually," in a weird way. But, like, this film doesn't lean in either direction. It's not for casuals, but it's not for diehards either. And I think if it leaned one way or the other, it would have been better. So if they'd have done more of the Nicky stuff, but with other ones of his characters, if they'd have leaned into Face Off a bit more, or if they'd have leaned into his other roles a bit more, I'd have found that a bit more entertaining. But to just have, like, 2 scenes or 3 scenes where he's hallucinating about an alter ego, it just stuck out a little bit for me. I was a bit like, right, so people that have watched this casually won't get it at all, and then people that did enjoy it because they know who he was and they think, oh, I know who he was, that makes me feel special. You only get it once with that Nicky character, so it was a bit of a wasted opportunity for me. That, and my crazy is that Nicolas Cage, after reading into some kind of trivia of this, he had to be convinced to even do this film. It's just the most bizarre thing in the world. Like, he had to wait until a script was completed and finished, and he had to read the script before he'd even agree to it. You'd have thought that this would just be an absolute dream thing to do, but I guess someone who is serious about his films, as crazy as some of them can be, wants to know it's not going to be a piss take, I guess, as opposed to, a genuine piece of cinema. So I suppose it's understandable, I guess.
I think they did quite well in the scripting, because it quite easily could have gone down the insulting route, couldn't it? I think, but they did balance it, that it was mostly a homage to Nick rather than let's take the piss out of him. So I think they did find that balance, and that's probably why, as you say, that he eventually agreed to do it. Stu, your good, bad, and crazy, please.
I mean, I was thinking, with the Nicky stuff, could it have been a rights thing where a lot of it wasn't cleared to use, and different studios are owning different things? I mean, weirder, more mental things have happened in the past, so you could rule it. It might have been the case, because thinking about it, I mean, I mentioned it. I like the Nicky thing because I like that era of, but to only bring Wild at Heart character rather than some of the more well-known ones, obviously, other than in terrible Blackpool waxwork form, did seem a bit strange thinking about it. I mean, the good. I mean, the fact that it worked, the fact that they didn't fuck it up, was the good thing about it. Because, like I said, that I was trepidatious about it because of the concept is a bit odd, and who do you market this at, really? and if you haven't got everything, then you can't aim it at the KG files or wherever we are. But yeah, just the fact that everything worked, not the fact that Pedro was great and everything, because obviously he's going to be great because it's Pedro Pascal. But the fact that everyone was on point with it, everyone seemed to throw themselves completely into it, regardless of how big or small their role was, and it just worked. And we haven't seen many of them doing this the last few years. And you could see that everyone was having a great old time making it, and it shone through really. When the bad being probably, I don't, you know what? I don't even know if there is one, because I've watched this 3 times now, which is rare in the space of a year. I would not do this normally. Watch it in the cinema, then I watched it again when it came on Prime, and then again for this yesterday. And every single time I've loved it. And I've still laughed as much in different parts, in different ways, as I've said. I you know, having a bad, no. It's getting a pass. It's getting a pass from being bad. And the crazy is, I went out look, I mentioned before that I went out of my way to recommend this to people. I know this is coming later on. People didn't think that Cage had done anything for a long time. But then when there's a few people who did watch this film on my recommendation who loved it so much, then went on to go and watch the swearing thing on Netflix because of this, and seeing that he was back, and then and because it was on in one of his most recent things, of all the stuff to watch, because it was on Netflix and it was easy, they went to watch the swearing thing. And you think, okay, fine, he might have the same beard and he might look the same, but very different projects. But there you are.
Yeah. Brilliant. They need to do a second season of that, because there's still plenty of swears that they haven't covered. So, yeah, I think he needs to get on that, definitely. My good, Paddington 2 is fucking brilliant. It was the perfect choice of film for them to sort of bond over as well. So I think they did really well picking that one. But, yeah, it's Pedro, isn't it? I mean, he's phenomenal in this movie, and his career has just gone from strength to strength over the last few years, especially with a lot of people are going to know him specifically from The Mandalorian, because before that you might recognize his face, but you possibly wouldn't know. He's one of these you'd see in a film and maybe have to check IMDb on what else he'd done. But he's growing and maturing as an actor now, even to the extent like you've seen him do all his serious stuff and his comedy works now coming in, and he's shown that he's got proper comedy chops. And now he's returning back to the serious ways with The Last of Us. But if you were to spend 5 minutes on TikTok, you'd see Pedro Pascal, the human, interacting with Bella Ramsey, because it's all over TikTok and everyone's just fawning over this guy and what a genuine human he seems to be. And it feels like this film played quite a big role in his evolution as both an actor and as Pedro Pascal, the star. So I think he was perfect in every sense of the word for this film.
I mean, coming on to this after Wonder Woman 1980, whatever, where he was the best thing about that film as well.
Yeah, hands down, yeah.
Which is an absolute, it's an abhorrently shit film, that is.
That's the only reason I won't say it's bad, is because Pedro's in it, because he was brilliant.
Yeah, and
he holds it up.
And he holds it up by hammering it up from start to finish. So you have got like the comedy stuff like this. You have got the absolutely ridiculous in that Wonder Woman film, and you have got his serious side in Mando and now The Last of Us as well. So he really can do anything and everything he possibly wants to. And it does seem really odd that it's taken a PlayStation game to make him a world star when he's been doing this stuff for years.
Yeah, absolutely. My bad, like as great as I think the supporting cast are, and I think supporting cast is the perfect description for them, because they all support Pedro and Nick in this. They really help elevate their performances. But my bad is they didn't use Sharon Horgan enough. Like, she was really good in it, but Sharon Horgan, it's not like she's just breaking America. She was in Date Night, she was in Man Up, BoJack, Bob's Burgers. Like, she's done quite a bit in America. She's had a couple of TV shows that have been on HBO. She is known. and she's known as a good comedy actor. And we didn't get to see any really of her comedy chops until the very end when she was playing the Italian mobster's young hot wife. Like, there's a little bit of a giggle there, but I felt like she was kind of underused throughout the rest of it. As great as she was, I think they could have just given her a bit more. But that might just be because I love Sharon Horgan and felt underserved as a fan of hers. And my crazy, so I've also trawled through your IMDb's and stuff for a few facts. Nick Cage thought Javi was the best written character in the movie, so much so he asked to trade parts. So Nick Cage wanted to play Javi in a film about Nick Cage. It wasn't until Pedro Pascal was cast that Cage relented. The film originally was going to be about Daniel Day-Lewis in the Nick Cage role, and there is talk about a sequel with Daniel Day-Lewis not reprising, but taking over the role of the actor within the film. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis has effectively retired, so I can't see him doing it, but it would be kind of hilarious to see. Addie Cage, so Nick's daughter, was played by Lily Sheen. She is Michael Sheen and Kate Beckinsale's daughter, which I had no clue that she was a famous kid, but there we go. And also, according to Neil Patrick Harris, Nick Cage had body makeup to cover his tattoos. He was asked why, because obviously Nick Cage is a real human being, and his response was the character didn't have as many wives as him either, so he covered the tats. So, did you enjoy the film, Matt?
Yeah, I obviously did. It surpassed expectations when I saw it the first time, and it kept all of the joy that I had from the first time I saw it. So, just can't really ask for anything more.
Stu?
Yeah. When I trailed it last week or the week before, I can't remember when it was, where I said that this is going to tickle the revised 5 list when we do it. And it definitely is in that top 5. Don't know where, but it is. I love this film.
Yeah, completely in agreement with both of you. Actually, I think it's one of his best pieces. It's brilliant on the film nerd side of me, and just the lover of silly bollocks. Like, it was, it's great. Gave me everything I wanted in a Nick Cage film. So yeah, perfect. Based on this film and this film alone, was Nick Cage good or bad, Stu?
Yeah, of course, he was excellent. So was Pedro, but it's not a Pedro cast, so even though he might as well be. Yeah, Nick Cage was at his very best in this film.
Matt, are you in agreement? Was he good?
Yeah, of course. And the funny thing is, you only need this film. This is the only film in the whole ones that we've done where you can say, on this film and this film alone, you get your flavour of Nick Cage in all of the different varieties that you need. But yeah, he was great in it.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep. He was fantastic. He was enigmatic, but also entirely welcoming into his persona, and played with the idea of who Nick Cage is to the wider world, which is precisely what you needed from that role. He did it with aplomb. And like, I want more films with Nick Cage as Nick Cage now. If they were to do a sequel, I just want it to be him. I think the only disappointing thing really for me with this film is that Javi doesn't exist, because I would love to get Javi on this podcast. I feel he would be the perfect guest to get on here. But yeah, but no, clean sweep, 3 yeses, brilliant. So finish the sentence. If you enjoyed The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, you may also like. Matt?
This was really tough, this. I've really struggled with this all day thinking about it, because I just can't think of a film like it that, apart from, I didn't want to go down the route of sort of like actors playing themselves, because I thought that was too easy. So I'm going to go for a film that had no right to be as good as it was, and only because I don't know when I'll get a chance to talk about it unless we do it next week. And that would be Puss in Boots. the new Puss in Boots film, and the reason I do it because it's a film that has a way more heart than this than it has any right to have. It's just an excellent film, and people were putting on like Twitter and TikTok and stuff that they didn't think that the most emotionally tormenting yet beautiful film of this year would be Puss in Boots, any kind of Shrek related canon. but it absolutely is. Like, I think I had some form of existential crisis after watching this film. It's just wonderful, and it'll like, it's not Paddington 2, but it's up there as one of the best animated films of the last decade or however long it's been that I've seen, that really made me smile yet had heart to it. And it's just brilliant. And everyone from all facets of casual film to film nerds to the podcasters to everything are just raving about it, about how good it is for a film that like had no hype coming into it. Like Shrek now at this point, it's just another Fast and Furious. It's just it's just this film after film after film. No one really cares anymore. It's like the American Pie thing that they just kept churning out sequels. Whereas this just came out of the blue, out of nowhere, and is really excellent.
I really want to see it. I just haven't found time to fit it in. Is it an end of the saga? I mean, it's called the Last Stand. Is it something like that?
Is it?
The Last Wish.
The Last Wish. I can't say.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, it's it's just. But essentially, the whole plot of it is that Puss in Boots hasn't realised that he's used up 8 of his 9 lives, and he's only got 1 life left. And does he cherish the last life that he has?
Okay, that sounds quite sweet, actually. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Trust me, like it's so good. It's really good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more about it because I want to not need you to see it.
Cool. Okay, Stu, what do you reckon?
I mean, I've only seen up to Shrek the Third, so I'm a bit behind on the Puss in Boots saga. Look at, because it is so weird and unique, semi-unique, this film. I thought, well, the only thing I could that it reminded me of was actors doing something in a film about actors that they're not supposed to be doing, and that was Tropic Thunder. And it's got the same level of stupidity towards the end, but throughout the whole film. And obviously the whole Robert Downey Jr. nonsense in it, which is still blows my mind that even happened even then, let alone now. But yeah, I watched it a few years ago, and it's probably more, just for the shock factor, it's more funny now than it was then. It's definitely worth a rewatch if you haven't seen it for a while. But yeah, Tropic Thunder, the only thing that comes close, and that's for part of this film.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, actually. Mine, like, obviously we've mentioned adaptation a couple of times, so I think that's worth mentioning. It's a film that's very metatextual on a lot of levels, which very much ties in with how this is done. But obviously, check out our back catalogue. We've already discussed that film. We all loved it. Cage was Oscar nominated. It's a great movie. But the film that I was going to go for is Annie Hall. It's one of the earliest sort of meta films that springs to mind for me. A lot of fourth wall breaking. One of the first examples of someone being funny in a film and people laughing. Like, whenever I watch, like, say, Friends, for example, I don't know why that springs to mind, but I remember, like, Chandler cracking a wiseacre joke and all of the audience laughs, but the people on set act like he hasn't just told a joke. And I find that so bizarre when someone's telling a good joke that they don't laugh. But Annie Hall was the first film that I remember seeing someone tell a joke and humans actually reacting like a human being would. So for some reason, that's the first thing that sprang to mind, just because of the meta nature of it all. So that's my one, is Annie Hall. I know it's probably a bit controversial with it being Woody, but it's a good film regardless, to be fair. So that is another Nick Cage movie in the record books. If you've seen this one or any of the others, get in contact at Cage Fighting Pod on the socials, or cagefightingpod@gmail.com via email. If you're listening to us now, obviously you want to make sure that you're subscribed on whatever podcatcher that you're listening on, and please leave us a review. We would fully appreciate that one. And finally, thank you for just giving us your time this week. We truly appreciate it. So for this week, Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, everybody. Have a great week ahead, and check in on your pals. Have a great week.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everyone. I mean, if you are listening to this on Monday, we are mere 4 days away from Cocaine Bear. So let's wish the week away and get there quicker. Goodbye, everyone.
It's goodbye from me, and remember, I'm not going to suck his dick or fuck his wife or watch me watch him fuck his wife.
Yeah, excuse me, real quick. The guy that owns this house, what's his name?
Javi.
Yeah, Javi. Look, if Javi wants me to suck his dick or fuck his wife or watch me watch him fuck his wife, that's a no-go. You understand? That's no bueno.
I am Javi.